Welcome to Illini Drive on this really nice Wednesday. It's very nice outside, Nithin.
Very nice. Like high 70s?
Yeah, like high 70s. Not too hot, not too cold.
Not too sunny.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a nice walk over here. I'm glad I was able to get out the apartment. But yeah, it's a nice Wednesday. It's midterm week. I'm struggling. How are you doing, Nithin?
Not too bad, just because I don't really have many midterms. I mean,
nice.
It's the luxury of being a journalism major.
Yeah.
A lot of midterms end up just becoming papers.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, that's not the case for me. I'm taking like theory classes, so like I'm taking the editing class.
Okay.
Which that I just did a midterm for that this morning, and tomorrow I have a midterm for history of American journalism, which is tough. And then
that sounds tough.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a lot of reading. And then on Friday I'm taking a gen ed geology course, and I have a midterm for that. Oh, so it's a lot. It's a lot. But I'm chilling. It'll be a good weekend. I'm excited to be here and talk about a lot of things today. We're gonna get into first day of practice for both men's and women's basketball here at Illinois. Get into the NFL. Get into the Bachelor. We're excited. That episode was crazy last night, but we'll get there. But Nithin, today you were on. They had a media availability Zoom for basketball, both women's and men's, and you were on both of them. Mm-hmm. I caught the last bit of the men's basketball with Brad Underwood. What were your impressions of how they're kind of just adjusting to everything COVID-wise with both teams?
Yeah, so they're pretty optimistic about how it's gone because there really hasn't been too many issues so far. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, because Illinois has a great setup with COVID testing, it looks like the concerns are with how other teams will be dealing with it, because you're going to have to play a lot of Big Ten teams, and there's some that have concerning results so far. I mean, we've seen already, we're going to get into it later, but with college football, there's been some major issues, and it's going to be interesting what we see happen with college basketball coming back too, because those students have been on campus this entire time, and not all of them have been required to test until recently. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It's very interesting that you bring that up, because obviously the Big Ten protocol for student athletes, starting with football and then obviously extending to basketball, is daily testing with the antigen test. That isn't obviously countrywide, and it is kind of concerning because I think Illinois is going to host a four-team multi-team event known as MTE on November 25th to 27th, early in the season, with teams. Oh, they had the teams.
It's Baylor, Gonzaga, one other team. I'm not sure.
But all these teams are out of the Big Ten Conference, so they do not follow the same testing protocols as the Big Ten. Obviously a little worrisome, especially because they're coming here, 4 different teams playing in a round-robin type tournament. Mm-hmm. So I guess it'll just be interesting. From what I caught from the last bit of Zoom that Brad was talking about, is there's just an adjustment period. They're talking a lot there. Obviously, every time they have something new come up, they adjust it into their schedule. I know the question was asked about what are they adjusting as far as like team meals and like stuff like that, and Brad was talking about how they're trying to figure that out. Like they may not be able to have like group team meals, or maybe they have to sit so far apart that it's basically like not having a team meal. He brought up the example of what happened at Notre Dame, where multiple cases arose from a team meal. So it's just a different time. Good for them for talking about it. I think Brad said that they have a Big Ten coaches Zoom like twice a week to ask these questions. Because this is an ever-evolving situation, as we've seen for the past 7 months. It's just every week it seems like a new development or a new conflict or hurdle that people have to get through to play sports with this virus around. But I mean, I am still confident in Illinois and the Big Ten. I think they are still the best set up to succeed. But we'll see how that goes. In terms of women's basketball, Anything stand out? I know you covered them a little bit last year. I did as well in the beginning part of the season. How's Nancy Faye talking or feeling about the team? Obviously, with the departure of Brendyn Beasley and Petra Holoshinska, two of the better players on the team last year. It'll obviously be rough. It's a young team, but they also got a transfer center. I'm blanking on her name right now.
Eva Rubin,
who's 6'4", 6'5".
6'5", big,
very large player. But yeah, how's Nancy Faye really feeling about this team right now?
It's hard to really ever see Nancy Faye in a bad mood.
True.
Just because that's her personality. She's someone who looks the positive, and she's had to with teams that have really, really struggled in her first few years at Illinois. I think she genuinely does feel more optimistic, and as you mentioned, part of it's Eva Rubin, because last year the Illini got destroyed inside. That women's team could not stand to the task because Kennedy Miles was playing center for a lot, and she's 5'11". She's not going to be able to guard 6'4", 6'5". Now that Eva Rubin's coming in, you got a couple other bigs in that rotation. You can get Miles going down to a 3 or a 4, which is a more natural position. You're going to feel pretty good about what this team will do, especially on the defensive end, because defensively it was a problem, and inside scoring should also help. The interesting thing to look at, though, is shooting, because, as you mentioned, Petra Holoshinska, 41% three-point shooter last year. Great, fantastic, one of the best in Illini history. You don't really have too many shooters on this team. You might have to see some freshmen step up. Maybe Jada Peebles improves. Kennedy Miles, she didn't shoot a lot outside last year, but I talked to her today, and she felt pretty good about how her shot's been looking because she's just been putting in a lot of work in that regards, and she's going to get more of an opportunity this year. I'd feel optimistic if I was a fan of this women's team. I still don't think they're going to be competing for a Big Ten title or anything like that, but they should have improvement. I think like 4 to 6 Big Ten wins is realistic.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a lot of good points. This team definitely struggled on defense. Where I think that they really shined last year was in transition. They have a lot of ball handlers, whether that be Jada Peebles, whether that be Kennedy Miles, Janae Ephraim. There's a lot of ability for transition, but I think about this all the time. I don't know who's going to replace that, 13, 14 points a game that Petra was able to bring in. A lot based on her shooting, and also just the leadership. It's gonna have to be time for a lot of people to stand up.
That's true. It's a really young team.
It's a very young team.
Janaya seems pretty confident as one of the few upperclassmen that are going to get big minutes. But as you mentioned, like your best players look like Kennedy Miles, Eva Rubin, Janaya from Jada Peebles. Most of those players are young. They're sophomores or, in Eva's case, a transfer.
Yeah, I mean, but I think I'm very confident that if anyone can instill the confidence in them to become those leaders, it's Nancy Faye. In the times that I've talked to her, she's very, very direct, and she gets you can see her on the court, and she's always yelling, and she's always into the game. She just seems like she can get you into a headspace where you want to perform and want to do better, which is always good. When it comes to that, what are you most excited about as you look forward to this team this year?
Oh, it's that it's going to be a different team than usual. I mean, last year was Petra and Brendyn. It was like year before that, Alex Whittinger. This year, it looks like they're going to have a lot of people have to step up, and it's the thing I'm interested in is seeing who can take over that leading scorer responsibility, because in the past we've kind of had someone set up for that. This year, it's not necessarily fit for who's going to take that role. I mean, I anticipate Kennedy's going to be the main one responsible for scoring, but Eva might be. I mean, you could see Jada. I could see Janae Terry stepping up. There's a lot of players on this team that are going to get a chance to show that they are worth competing.
Yeah, I think that it's really cool because I think they're at the spot where there's a lot of raw talent, and because of the departure of a few seniors, whether that be through graduation or transfer, there's a lot of opportunity for competition in terms of nobody really knows what that starting lineup is going to look like. It shifted a lot last year. It's going to shift this year. and I don't think there's anybody who's a definite solid starter all year. So it'll just be super interesting to see like how Nancy Faye puts together this team that's a very new identity, how she wants them to try to play defense, how she wants them to score. So I'm very interested to start watching some women's basketball.
Yeah.
Unfortunate because obviously how it looks like there won't be fans in the stands.
Yeah,
I don't know how media will work. We're still figuring that out for football. But yeah, hopefully they get a lot of these games on television and we can watch those. Moving over to Illini basketball or men's basketball.
They have some weird similarities. It's a different team, granted, because the Illini look like the men's team looks like they're going to be competing for a Final Four national title, while the women's are just trying to improve.
But similar. That's what I was going to say. Very similar feel in terms of there's a lot of talent coming in. You're kind of getting out with the old and coming in with the new and still trying to figure it out. Brad Underwood has said today that he hasn't even thought about who's going to be, starting, except with the exception of obviously Ayo is going to start,
which is crazy. I mean, I expect
I don't
Kofi
really believe.
to.
Yeah. I don't believe that Brad hasn't thought about the starting lineup. I'm sure he has. I mean, for me, I think we've all thought about it nonstop since last year.
Totally.
And I think that if I was Brad, I'm looking at Ayo, Kofi, and Trent to be for sure starters, at least to start off the.
I'd say Ayo and Kofi for sure.
You don't think Trent?
Trent, I feel confident, but Adam Miller, I could see taking a spot.
I just think the experience of Trent is really going to show in this next month before games start, and I think that's going to win him the starting spot.
Do you think year round though? Because that was my big thing. Like I could see Trent. I'd be surprised if Trent didn't start game 1.
Right.
But game 22,
we'll see. I mean, I feel like as long as Trent performs to what a solid Trent Frazier performance, especially if he plays the same defense that he did last year, I think there's no way. Brad values defense so much. I think there's no way that he is taken off the court, especially being a senior leader. So I think those three are probably for sure. When it comes to those two other spots, it's very, very debatable. Thing that was a little concerning, there was a little, there's some injury concerns. Jermaine Hamlin was out with something with his hand. BBV re-aggravated his foot, something like that.
I don't think it's too bad.
We're right.
I've just seen him, him around campus. I've seen him bike, walk in the
big
booth.
Dude. He's a huge dude.
Yeah, he is a big guy. But it is definitely a concern because we haven't even gotten to the season and having those injuries. Granted, they don't look like they're going to be hugely impactful, at least early.
Right.
It's important to have pieces lined up early in the season when you're going to get chances.
Definitely. So obviously that's something that they'll have to face in the next month, and obviously with everything that has gone on, there's like lineup or there's that lack of preparation time, which is going to obviously affect how lineups happen, how rusty guys are. But good thing that'll also affect every other team in the nation. One thing that was really kind of exciting for me to hear is that Underwood mentioned that Ayo was up to 206 pounds.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And that he was only 170 as a freshman.
I think that might be a little hyperbole.
Probably I feel like coming in the summer before his freshman year, I could see that though. Like
I could see 180, 170s for his height.
Yeah, he is like 6'5",
6'6". Like that's really skinny. Granted, he was skinny his freshman year. He's not. I wouldn't say he's jacked by any means, but he's put on. Being 206 means he's put on some good muscle.
Right, and that's exciting because you see Ayo driving to the lane, how crafty he is, how smart he is with his body. You add an extra 10 pounds from maybe last year what he was. I don't know what his weight was last year, but
he's listed at 185. But
last year it was probably that was probably the beginning of the season or even during the summer. But still, it just with his body maturing, with him growing into his man body, like that's just going to be so exciting that it's an extra 10 pounds when you're going up against these big Big Ten defenders. That he's going to be able to use in the paint, and maybe that even will help him defensively. I can assume he hasn't lost a step in terms of quickness, but if he's stronger, that's really going to help him defensively. So I'm just very excited to see. Also, it just looks like there's just a lot of hype around these young guys. Coleman Hawkins, an elite shooter, Brad Underwood says. Says he'll get on the court earlier maybe than I even thought. He's 6'10", calls him a great stretch forward, but eventually would be a 3. If in 2 years Illinois has a 6'10" starting 3, like that's really, really good. So I don't know, just a lot to be excited about. It's nice because while this team feels old and not old, but like experienced and seasoned, there's also a lot to hope for in the future. That gives you a lot of hope. Hopefully that they can pick recruiting back up.
It looks like it's already started because we've got Io, Kofi, Adam Miller, and Andre Cabello. That's a great 3-year run right there. And you can go back 1 year, you got Trent Frazier. I'm really interested in how, as you've mentioned, those last 2 spots get filled because Brad in media availability today, he talked a lot about Georgie, and he felt really, really good about what he's seen from Georgie. He says he probably worked the hardest out of anyone in the country getting into shape during COVID. And I want to see Georgie get back to that freshman year self where he was dominating down low, even though the Illini were struggling. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's something he can do. He's so talented in the post, but obviously when you have Kofi down there, it's kind of hard to get your bearings in there and try to work your thing when obviously Kofi is the main force in the paint. But it'll just be interesting to see where Georgie finds his groove. Obviously, we saw how talented he was 2 years ago. I don't think he's lost talent. I think it's just obviously trying to figure out how you fit amongst all these great players. But it'll be very interesting. That'll lead us to our first break. When we get back, we have some larger NCAA news to get to, and then we'll head right into NFL football when we return on Illini Drive 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU. The SEC was the first college football conference to come back and decide to play amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's started off nice, but it's been a rocky road these last 2 weeks. News today broke, I think just a couple hours ago, right before the show, that Alabama football coach Nick Saban has tested positive for coronavirus. He's asymptomatic and left the facility immediately. But obviously he's the coach of the team, so he's probably been around players and other coaches. So that is a huge concern for Alabama, who is scheduled to play Georgia this week. And then there from Chris Hummer, a writer for 24/7 Sports. This is a quick COVID-19 recap for the SEC. Vanderbilt versus Missouri has been postponed. Florida versus LSU has been postponed. Ole Miss has a number of guys out, unspecified number, and Nick Saban has just tested positive. You'd have to think that with, 3 days until the Alabama game, that might not be played, especially if you get other positives.
Which is crazy because it's right now the game of the year.
No, exactly. And that Ole Miss, if you have a number of guys out, you also think that is going to have an effect on it. That's half the SEC just not playing this weekend.
Yeah, and it's 3 really great teams. You got Florida, granted they just lost to Texas A&M, but they're a team who has a potential Heisman candidate in Kyle Trask. Then you got Alabama, who looks like potentially the best team in the country. Mac Jones has been unbelievable. Georgia's coming off of a big win over Tennessee, I believe. It's a lot of the SEC that is been taken down, and I hate to say it, but it's not too surprising because we anticipated that
not at all
that one of these conferences is going to get hit hard, and the Big 12 has had some teams miss games and postpone games, but it hasn't really affected conference play yet. It clearly has for the SEC, and we'll see how this goes because we've already seen so far with the NFL that there's been a mixed bag. You had a great start in the first 2-3 weeks. Then the Titans happened, and then Bears get tested positive, and then the Chiefs
Patriots and the Chiefs.
And then the Patriots, and it's just
Hawks.
A snowball effect.
Yeah, I mean, or not the Hawks, the Falcons.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because the basketball team, Atlanta Hawks. That's where we are. Miss basketball.
We've barely been gone.
I know, but I miss basketball. I miss like stadium basketball. I miss watching Trae Young just pull up from 30.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, we've talked about this even before the SEC started this year, that's something that's going to be a concern. Obviously, southern states, the states that house SEC schools, are being hit really hard right now as they grapple with how they deal with restrictions as they grapple with how they deal with things like that. Obviously, Florida Governor DeSantis said that Florida could have a bunch of fans. It
makes no sense though, because Florida has been the biggest hit state in the country.
No, I can't make it make sense. I'm 20 and don't have anything to do with Florida, but it's, it is what it is. And it's just very upsetting because you got to feel for these kids, right? They're put in an impossible situation. It's like, okay, a lot of these SEC kids, especially the starters, are just really, really good, have NFL aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of put in this situation where, you can opt out and take a year off, but then how's that going to affect your future?
You can only do that if you're Jamar Chase, who's doing that for LSU, because he's probably going to be a top 10, top 20 pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't do that
if you have to prove something.
Yeah, if you're Joe Burrow last year, you can't do that because
exactly.
you're a 7th round, 6th round pick.
So they're
the number one.
I feel for these guys who are put in an impossible situation. I feel for the guys who don't really have NFL aspirations, who are there to get an education and have to play football. It's a very tough situation. You hope for these guys to come out healthy, as healthy as possible. But I mean, this is the reality that we face, and we come back to pretty much every week, every time there's a new positive test in any sport, of how we handle sports during a pandemic. I think the only way that's a foolproof plan is the way the NBA and the NHL and the WNBA did it. It's put them in a bubble, but obviously for college sports, even for the NFL, that's just so unrealistic.
Even for MLB,
it's just unrealistic. There's when you get to a space where, I mean, even if it was an NBA regular season, it would have been unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into a space where there's more than 15 teams, it just gets insanely hard, and especially for the NFL, who has 53 men on a team plus all personnel, and then practice squad, and then you think about college, who is sometimes 80 guys on the team,
mm-hmm.
plus all the personnel, plus the student athlete aspect of it. It's just super unfortunate to see. I don't know what this means for the SEC going forward. I hope it's a warning sign, and I'm kind of glad that Illinois. Obviously, it's still kind of, it's scary that they're playing, but I'm glad that they took these few weeks, or this month and a half, really, after football was supposed to start, to really evaluate how they were going to do it safely. Hopefully, their method works. Obviously, when you have people just out in the community, there's no 100% way to guarantee they won't be infected. But hopefully Illinois just sees it, or the Big Ten in general sees this, makes plans, try to plan around it, and just be as good as they can.
The good thing is that the Big Ten has already said they won't have fans, and they don't have planning on having fans, which is, I mean, it's for a variety of reasons, but mostly because they've already seen schools that have fans have not done well.
Right.
And it's a lot of SEC, ACC. I mean, we've seen these schools hit hard with their team having to postpone big-time games and potentially having to maybe not forfeit, but just cancel a game. Wild
that you watch football on Saturdays and look at some of these stadiums, and it doesn't, like, some of the camera angles just don't look any different than they were last year.
And that's a problem. And the NFL, like, the fact that I think Cowboy Stadium is allowing people, it's like 20,000 people, that's a problem because it's basically an indoor stadium.
Yeah.
And it's bigger.
It has one hole at the top.
Yeah. It's basically an indoor stadium, and as a result, you're going to get a situation where COVID can spread fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish the NCAA would realize, and specifically each conference, the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12, would realize that if they want to finish out a regular season, the best way to do that is to just cancel fans.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a huge stream of revenue that they'd be losing. Obviously, they don't want to do that because of how big. But it's just another factor, right? You can't even, with this disease, you can't even control spreading inside the teams. And it's not saying that the fans are the reason the players are getting COVID. That's not usually how it happens. But still, that's just an extra layer of protection that now you have to think about. When you look at these Clemson games, when you look at even in the NFL, you said Dallas. Mary Lori Lightfoot from Chicago said today she was in talks with the Bears to see if they could get fans. I hope not. I mean,
yeah, I hope not.
I mean,
especially since Soldier Field's one of the smaller stadiums.
Right, exactly. So I mean, obviously, when you have sports, people are going to want to go see them live. That's a part of the atmosphere, especially in college, and I understand it. I miss going to basketball games. I miss going to football games, but it is what it is, and we've had to make sacrifices, and we just have to continue to do that because at the end of the day, these are lives that you go into risk when you play these sports, and you have to take as many mitigation efforts as possible.
And as weird as it sounds, the MLB actually did a fairly good job.
Yeah.
When at the beginning we thought it was horrible, it was gonna.
And none of them had fans.
They canceled. Yeah, they didn't have fans. They traveled with their teams.
Mm-hmm.
They went and played continuous games. They got tested constantly, and then they were able to now play a playoff on time and on schedule. And we're gonna also have to see what happens when they potentially have fans in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have seen what they've done, you should feel good about not having fans. And then if you look at the NFL and you look at college football, you should see that there are so many risks at just bringing in even 25% capacity.
Yeah. It's something that they have to balance. It's something that they really have to look at. Obviously, if you don't have games, you can't make revenue either way. I understand the revenue from fans. I know it's such a huge, important thing. They talked about that last year when they talked about canceling, or when they did cancel the NCAA basketball tournament. They talked about the revenue that they lost. It's tough. It's tough, and I understand that. But yeah, it's obviously we can say that about every situation that we live in right now, but that's just is what it is. Speaking of the NFL, though, Titans and Bills played last night on a Tuesday night football.
You didn't think it was going to happen. You were very confident.
I was very confident it wasn't going to happen, but then they just stopped testing positive, which is obviously a good thing. That's what you want.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, Titans steamrolled the Bills. Derrick Henry looked like what he looked like at the end of last year.
Just throwing Josh Norman.
Josh Norman hasn't had a good little last 4 years ever since he started.
Ever since the Panthers, yeah.
Yeah, ever since he started talking, and it's tough. But I don't really like Josh Norman, so it was kind of cool to watch him get tossed like that. But what I was thinking as I watched that video, imagine being Josh Norman or anybody that Derrick Henry's ever stiff-armed. In the NFL, you lift maybe 6 times a week except for game day. You dedicate your whole life to being as strong and physically able as possible. 6 times
seems like a little bit of a stretch.
You don't think they work out 6 times a week?
Well, I mean, in season now.
Okay.
Out of season, yeah.
Say out of season they work out 6 times a week. In season, maybe 4.
Okay.
Right? Dedicate your whole life to being as physically able as possible. Just to get thrown by somebody who's just genetically and
yeah, but he's like 6'3".
I know, but it's like
and 250.
You look at me and Josh Norman had the same probability of tackling Derrick Henry at that moment. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like watching that. And I'm nowhere.
I was gonna say, Brendyn, I don't know.
No,
I could and then I realized you're basically saying 0.
Right, exactly. We both had a 0% chance of tackling Derrick Henry in that moment, and that just made me feel so bad for every NFL player that has to tackle Derrick Henry.
It's also I love when this happens because then his high school stats get circulated.
Oh, I love his high school stats. They're my favorite thing of all time.
Oh my God, they're hilarious because senior year he ran for like 4,000 yards and 9 yards a carry.
Yeah, but he was doing that like literally 4,000 yards pretty much every season. I think he had 12,000 rushing yards his whole high school career, which is insane.
Yeah, I'm pulling the stats up right now.
I think he had 40 consecutive games of 100 plus rush yards. He had like 200-something rush yards a game. He had like 158 high school touchdowns.
He had 4,200 rushing yards his senior year. He carried the ball 462 times.
Yeah, they would just put him in Wildcat and be like, just go whatever hole you want to and run over somebody.
462 times. You're playing, like 11 high school games?
Yeah, so you play 11 high school games.
You're getting 40 carries a game, which is nuts.
Is that not what you do if you had Derrick Henry on your high school team? Imagine the receivers on that team. You could put anybody at receiver on that team and they wouldn't get the ball ever. Because you just have Derrick Henry running over 17-year-old kids.
No, but imagine play action in that offense.
You could throw the ball on me as long as I don't let Derrick Henry score.
But I feel like every play action pass, someone's going to be like,
oh yeah, I could take that. I'll put one man deep and you have to go tackle anybody, but I'm sending everybody at Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and who knows if you can even tackle him.
You can't. You saw those.
Because he looks like, he doesn't look too different now than he did
literally,
in high school.
he probably hit his growth spurt like sophomore year and just kept getting stronger after that. Did it say how many touchdowns he has?
Do you want total? Or
total, his whole career.
153.
Tell me that's not insane.
He had 2,000 yards every single season of high school. His lowest was his freshman year when he ran for 24.65.
I don't think anybody's ever run for 2,400 yards in an NFL season.
I think he did actually set, like, it was either the state record for rushing or the national record, but...
That's crazy. That's wild. That's like if you create a Madden player and just go crazy.
Not even. You can't even do that with a Madden player. You can't get 9 yards a carry with a Madden player. You can get maybe 6.
That's wild. We can fascinate about Derrick Henry is literally all day, every day. He's just such a... I don't even know how to explain him as a human being, but I don't even know if he is a human being. He's a monster. That's what he is.
Oh, okay.
He took somebody's ability and combined it. It's like Space Jam, but in football. But yeah, as we look forward to today or to this week, looking forward to the games. We have Texans on Sunday. Well, because there's no Thursday night football, which really threw me off this week.
Oh, is that?
There's no Thursday night game.
Wait, why?
I think it's because I don't know. Maybe it got postponed because the schedule shifted.
Was that the Patriots game? Were they supposed to be Thursday night? Could that be why? Or Broncos?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I don't know. The schedule changed so much this past week. I have no idea what happened. Now. It's confusing. I try to keep up with Schefter. He's out here good. He's done a really good job.
And there's 2 Monday night games.
That's wild. Again.
Well, there was only one.
No, like last week there was 2.
Last week,
or there was 2 Sunday night games? No, there was 2.
No.
There was 2.
See,
Monday.
This is the problem. It's so confusing. There's been 2 post Sunday games the last 2 weeks. So there's 2 weeks ago, I guess.
That's wild.
Well, last week was two Monday nights. This
2 weeks ago it was the Patriots and Chiefs Monday night, and then it was the Falcons Packers Monday night. So it's 2 back-to-back Monday night games, which is a little bit too much football on Monday. I can't watch. I dedicate my Sunday to watching footking
I dedicate a lot of my Saturday too. So that's
I can't just watch 5-6 hours of football on a Monday night. I got stuff to do. Looking at this week, Texans versus Titans. I think the Titans steamroll the Texans. Texans have had just a tough year.
Yeah, maybe it'll be good for. Wait, do they have their first round pick? I was going to say maybe it'll be good for a pick.
The Titans or the Texans?
Texans.
Because they should.
Well, that Laramie Tunsil trade. I don't know if they gave up their pick in that.
That's tough. Looking for good games. Browns Steelers will be a good game. That's like this. The Browns who are looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, Browns.
I told you this got to be their year, but the Steelers who, having the hiccups, haven't really faced anybody formidable this year.
Oh boy, you're gonna get Gabby coming.
Oh, I told her this yesterday, and she was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I said, "You might lose to the Browns." And I think they will.
That's not even a bad loss, though.
It's not a bad loss, but the Steelers haven't played anybody, so
that's true.
I don't know.
Hey, Chase Claypool, though.
You gotta watch out for those touchdowns is insane. They do have good receivers. Obviously, the Bears play the Panthers. Isn't a lot of good games. Washington and New York. It'll be a bad.
You don't think the New York Jets at the Miami Dolphins isn't a great game? I mean, Miami did put up 43 points against the San Francisco 49ers.
I will not be watching that game. There's nobody. There's no need. I have no interest, no fantasy.
I got one game that's going to be exciting, even if it's a blowout. Green Bay at Tampa.
You think it'll be a blowout? I think it'll be a little bit of a shootout. I think Green Bay will win by like plus 10, but I think there will be some good offensive plays. Chiefs and Bills might be a good one divisional. I don't know what's happening with the 49ers. Just crazy injury luck. They just sat Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if that's permanent. I don't know what's really happening with that. Cardinals and Cowboys might be a good one. Cowboys are obviously in a tough situation, losing Dak Prescott to that horrific ankle injury. He'll probably be out for the rest of the season. But they still have really good receivers.
They're still in it, though.
Andy Dalton is still... he could probably start on a really bad team.
Yeah, he's a below average starting quarterback.
Yeah, below average starting quarterback. So obviously you never want to see your starting quarterback go down, but you have a pretty good backup quarterback. So we'll see. Obviously their defense is still a big question mark. So it should be a bunch of offense. I don't know. What are you looking forward to this weekend?
I mean, it's got to be the Bears because I want to have this team tested because the Panthers have actually looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they don't have a ton of talent, they've got great coaching, and they look like they could be an up-and-coming team. Teddy Bridgewater torched the Bears last year when he came in with the Saints since Drew Brees was hurt.
I remember.
Yeah, it was bad. And this season, the Bears have, similar to the Steelers, they've had some luck in games. You could argue they should be 1-4 instead of 4-1, but they're 4-1.
They are.
And the defense looked phenomenal last week.
Really, really good.
Nick Foles, I want to see some more progression, make some better plays, get a little bit better because last week he was solid. He wasn't fantastic. He was solid. He made the right plays when he needed to. He made that game-winning drive, that huge throw to David Montgomery. I feel optimistic about this Bears team, and I want to keep feeling optimistic.
I'm glad you feel optimistic. I feel less pessimistic than I did last week. I thought it's going to get worked by the Buccaneers. I think I saw a lot of good things that could translate to this. As I said, I think on Monday, the game just didn't feel fluky, right? The Lions game, the Falcons game, the ability to save that New York Giants game. They all seem really fluky, right? Yeah. This is the only game where it looked like you had a team that is obviously going to face adversity in a game. That's always going to happen. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like they just, took the win out of nowhere. There was a progression. There was good defense. There was solid offense. There was there were good adjustments that were made throughout the game.
The pass rush was lively. The offense was able to make big plays when it needed to make big plays.
It was great. It was a really, really solid game against a team that I think is pretty good. Obviously, I think their record doesn't really reflect it right now if you look at the Buccaneers, but I think they're a pretty solid team. Nobody really wants to face that experience. But yeah, it'll be a real good test to the Panthers, who I think are in talent-wise or potential-wise probably in the same area, if not a little lower than the Bears.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see this game. Glad I'll be able to watch a Sunday early afternoon Bears game again.
Do you see the TV schedule this week? It's absolutely crazy. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 noon games, 2 3:00 games. Can the NFL do a better job at splitting these apart?
I wonder how do they decide that? Why don't they just do half and half?
Well, my guess is that more people watch the noon games than the 3:00 games.
That makes sense.
So they try to get...
And Fox has to have their one game of the week or whatever.
Well, they can do that in the 3:00 window because they sometimes do.
Right. But isn't it national? It doesn't change? Because most of these games will change depending on where you are at.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Well, are you talking about the 3:00 game? That's the national game? Oh, okay. But still, that you should have at least, 4 games?
Yeah, there's no reason that all these teams have to play.
Yeah.
18 teams playing at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's tough. But yeah, then I guess it just frees me up to watch that Buccaneers-Packers game.
That's going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
It'll be a fun game to watch. I don't know. This week isn't as exciting as I thought it would be. Because last week wasn't that exciting either. Except there were good games that came out of it. The Raiders-Chiefs game was really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Bears
We
game
had to miss the ending, though.
Yeah, we had to miss the ending.
Come on, Gabby.
Gabby always schedules the meetings at the worst times. Yeah. It's a call-out post. But looking forward to next week is a real challenge for the Bears as they face the Rams. Speaking of the Bears and Rams, who both have question marks in terms of their running back situation, there's a new running back on the market named Le'Veon Bell, who just ran a stain, just stole everything from the New York Jets organization.
Yeah, $27 million.
What, as a Bears fan, are you interested in Le'Veon Bell? And if so, do you think your interest is realistic?
Yes and yes. But he's not going to get more than $3 million.
Right. I think I'm in the same boat as you. There's two things that it's my emotions are tearing me apart, right? Of course you want a talent like Le'Veon Bell on your team. It's Le'Veon Bell He was on the Jets for 2 seasons, three seasons removed from Pro Bowl, right? He obviously is still can move on the field, is still good, was in a terrible system with a terrible coach, terrible talent around him. That's not going to be good for anybody. But you got to get him at the right price if you're the Bears, right? You cannot overpay for him. And I don't think you can sign him for more than 1 year, right? Especially when you have contract.
I don't think he's going to sign more than a 1 year deal, though.
I don't think he should. I don't think he wants to for 2 reasons. But especially when you have ongoing contract talks with people like Allen Robinson, right? You want to make sure that you show the guys that are already here that you're committed to them, even when you're still committed to winning. The thing that's tearing me apart is Le'Veon, I think, just wants to go to a contender, right?
I mean, the Bears are kind of a contender.
I still wouldn't consider them a contender. I think they're a playoff contender, but I don't think they can beat a lot of teams in the playoffs.
So if he's doing that, the Chiefs will probably be the best opportunity.
I'm thinking about the Saints, or not the Saints, the Seahawks.
Seahawks would be another good team.
Seahawks or the Rams, just because the Rams have a lot of money tied up everywhere.
Yeah, but
those are 2 teams that are like constantly, and the Rams have looked really better on offense than they did last year. Their defense is still pretty good. And if they add just that dynamic threat out of the backfield, same thing with the Seahawks. If they add a dynamic threat out of the backfield, I think that's probably those are the 2 top places for Le'Veon to go. And then obviously if he wants to come to Chicago for the right amount of money, I would definitely take him.
Yeah, I still don't think the Rams are going to go just because of the money. And plus they kind of have a weird backfield by committee working right now. So I do think the Seahawks are an interesting team, especially since Chris Carson's struggled with injuries.
Right.
But I do hope that he takes a good hard look at the Bears, because the Bears might be a decent fit for him, being that secondary back that can also catch passes, maybe run some routes, be that flexible role that Tariq Cohen was.
Definitely. But yeah, hopefully Le'Veon Bell finds that out. Obviously, you want him to go get his money and go get his success. But when we come back, new season of Bachelor started yesterday.
Oh.
It was wild. I don't know what to think about this. The previews look really good. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll cover that and more when we come back on 107.1 WPGU. Welcome back to Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU. Last night, The Bachelorette premiered. I got to stop saying Bachelor. I'm only 1 season in, so the only other thing I said was ever Bachelor. But it is The Bachelorette with Bachelorette Claire Crowley. I'm trying to make sure I pronounce that last name right. Being announced as a Bachelor. I think the episode started kind of slow. Obviously, they were recapping everything that happened with COVID and
a lot of COVID stuff.
A lot of COVID stuff. Obviously, that makes sense. They had to film during COVID. But it does seem sometimes that, like, when you're watching TV, not that it gets old, but it's just all kind of like the same information. And it's kind of just like making you relive the toughest parts of COVID, especially in the beginning. But yeah, there were a lot of interesting characters as guys. It was really crazy. But the craziest thing that happened was, as these guys were stepping out of the limo, and Claire's giving them a hug, greeting them, meeting them, all this stuff, she meets this one guy, 31-year-old Dale, who's a former pro football wide receiver. Actually, fun fact, played for the Bears and Packers, mostly a practice squad player. As she met Dale, talked to him, hugged him, he walks away, and she looks over to the camera and says, I think I just found my husband. At that moment...
She seemed really confident, too, when she said that.
Very confident. At that moment, Chris Harrison came over and said, "What'd you say?"
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Like, basically that he was like, I'm sure, like, obviously Chris Harrison has to be supportive. That's his job. But I feel kind of, I don't know, if I'm Chris Harrison and we just did this whole COVID quarantine and had all these guys come through, and the first thing you say when you meet the guys that I met your husband, it's a little weird.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously Chris Harrison was supportive of that. She met all the guys, was talked to all of them. Dale did get the first impression rose, which is the first rose you give out to make sure that guy is safe no matter what happens.
Brendyn, you don't got to explain it. If they don't know about the Bachelorette, they're not listening.
I don't know. I think we're hooking people.
All right.
Anyway, yeah, some drama happened early when Tyler C exposed that somehow he figured out that one of the other contestants named Yosef was DMing other girls on Instagram.
It was like a friend of a friend.
It was a friend of a friend type situation.
It
did not end well for Tyler C, as he did not get a rose that night, was sent home, was very, very salty about it. But yeah, you got to play your cards right. You can't come out snitching right out the gate.
Well, he got screwed, though, in the sense that he didn't even snitch to Claire. He just basically pulled Yosef aside and was like, hey, I heard about this and this. Mm-hmm. Is it true? The guy's like, no. He's like, all right, I'm just trying to make sure your intentions are pure. The whole, are you here for the right reasons?
Hate that.
Yeah, it is really
I hate it.
It's just the most overused thing in the Bachelor franchise. And then Yosef brings it to Claire.
Yeah,
and gets Tyler screwed.
Yosef had a good power move right there. He understood that these situations always come back in the end to bite him. Went to Claire, said, here, let me get in front of this. And then Claire went and got Tyler. And Tyler was like, oh, man, I wasn't even here for this conversation. I wasn't even ready for it. But, yeah, did not end well for Tyler C. As Tyler C. went home, very salty. He said some stuff like, oh, I hope it comes to the light or whatever. I don't know. Yeah. Some very salty stuff. Very unfortunate for him. What are your takeaways from the first episode?
It was, like you said, very slow at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I thought I was expecting a little bit more drama, but the 2 points you did already bring up. It was Dale, and then there was the man fight between Tyler C. and Yosef. I was very interested with her interaction with Blake, though. It was Blake.
Yeah.
Blake M, where he talked to her before the start of the show, and then I was expecting her to be like, well, you cannot do that. We're kicking you right off.
Yeah, that would have been crazy if like, they were having their conversation and Chris Harrison came out of nowhere like, unfortunately, you have to go home.
Yeah, you have broken the rules. Goodbye. And instead, she's like, thank you. I really needed that. And I was so surprised.
Isn't that weird? And I felt bad for him, though, because then they, like, he was the first person that...
He should have got the impression rose.
That impression rose, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. And he was sitting there all giddy thinking he was going to get the rose, and then she pulls Dale over to the side.
Because they were together, too.
That's so tough. That's so tough. Shout out Blake. He toughed it out. That's a tough situation. And I feel really bad for him.
That's
but the most interesting part, I guess, of the episode is that the previews for the rest of the season look like something just insane happens.
Yeah.
In terms of Claire finds her the one she wants to be with, and it's right now it's looking like it might be Dale.
Well, there's that the preview at the beginning of the show where she's in bed with Dale, which made me think, oh, there's no way it's not Dale.
Right.
And then the whole thing that we saw with her saying, like, oh, my God, I forgot what I just said. I think
she was tripping.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it was anyone else.
So all these guys obviously feel kind of duped because if this is what happens and she says, hey, like, I've already found this guy that I want to be with. I like him more than anybody else. You guys are kind of just out on your own. Seems like that. They were kind of hinting that there might be a second bachelorette to come through. The episode ended with somebody else coming out the limo. Obviously, we don't know who that is yet. I don't know. This episode wasn't that great. It was very slow. I don't really love Claire as a bachelorette.
Okay. It's too early for me to tell.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm very excited for the future. All this drama. I hope it starts popping off as soon as next week.
Yeah.
We will not have another Tuesday night football that will conflict with it. Hopefully, knock on wood.
Did you watch it live? I waited till the morning to watch
The Bachelorette?
Yeah.
No, I watched it live.
Okay.
At that point, the Titans were already beating the Bills really bad.
It was like not so, close, right? But it was a competitive-ish game.
I can't remember at that time.
Like the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just really excited for Bachelorette.
All right, fair enough. I know Gabby was pushing for it. I know.
Yeah, and she was just coming back from the show, so it was like, definitely.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, it was perfect timing. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I don't know. Are you excited for the rest of the season?
I am. I do feel the same way as you, where I don't think Claire's going to finish out this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very skeptical.
especially with how the guys are talking in these previews, where it's like,
Yeah.
this isn't what The Bachelorette should be doing, which is kind of funny because the whole goal of the show
Is to find love.
To find, your husband or spouse.
And you can't be mad at somebody if you find that right away.
Yeah.
You know?
But I mean,
it is what it is.
It is a show.
It's a tough
reality
situation.
TV.
Yeah, it's reality TV, but it's a tough situation on both sides. But we'll obviously update you every Wednesday. Try to keep you updated. But yeah, for me, for Nithin, Gabby and Josh will be here tomorrow. Preview some stuff that's going to be happening this weekend. But this has been Illini Drive on 107.1 WPGU.